Breaking news! Something just happened inside the Ravens universe that could completely change the energy heading into training camp, and it has fans buzzing for all the right and wrong reasons. An unexpected shot was fired at one of Baltimore's biggest stars, and the way the locker room has responded might tell us everything we need to know about how this team is going to play in 2025. But here's the real twist. This isn't just about words. This could be the spark that wakes up a defense that already has the talent to dominate the entire league. But before we move on, make sure you hit that like button if you're a true Ravens fan. It's always amazing to see fans of all ages supporting this team. And if you feel like it, comment, "Go Ravens!" Right now. Let's see how strong this fan base really is. Because what was said about Roquan Smith isn't just criticism, it's personal. And the way Baltimore's players are reacting could set the tone for the entire season. So, what exactly was said? And why might this be the best thing to happen to the Ravens all offseason? Let's dive in. Now, here's the deal. ESPN's NFL insider Jeremy Fowler has stirred up some controversy after releasing his annual top 10 positional rankings, which involve polling GMs, scouts, and assistant coaches across the league. Roquan Smith was ranked as the second best off-ball linebacker in the NFL, sitting right behind San Francisco's Fred Warner and ahead of Philadelphia's Zach Bond, Kansas City's Nick Bolton, and Carolina's Frankie Louvu. By any measure, that's elite company, and frankly, it's well-deserved. Smith recorded 154 tackles last season, continuing to prove he's one of the best run-stopping linebackers in football. But here's where things got messy. At the bottom of Fowler's report, an anonymous NFL defensive assistant didn't just give Smith credit, he took a shot at him. According to Fowler, 2 voters even placed Smith as low as 10th on their ballots. The anonymous assistant said, "I think he needs to get in better shape. Looks a little sluggish at times." That's right. Someone inside the league is questioning Roquan Smith's conditioning, suggesting that he isn't as physically prepared as he should be. That criticism didn't sit well with Ravens players, especially veteran linebacker Kyle Van Noy. Van Noy fired back in defense of Smith, responding to a tweet quoting Fowler's report by saying, "Hey Jay Fowler, tell that NFL assistant to EAD. Agent Zero is on some, and you are AB for hiding. Put your name on it." That's as strong of a response as you'll ever hear from a teammate, and it shows just how much respect Smith commands in the Ravens locker room. And honestly, you can't blame Van Noy for backing his guy. Smith has been the centerpiece of this defense since arriving in Baltimore, and despite not being perfect in coverage, he has been one of the most reliable tacklers in the league. His 154 tackles last season speak for themselves, and he remains one of the most feared linebackers in stopping the run. Critics will point out that Fred Warner plays a more versatile style, excelling in coverage, but Baltimore doesn't need Smith to be Warner. The Ravens need him to do what he does best, stuff the run and be the enforcer in the middle of that defense. Now, let's talk about this conditioning narrative because, frankly, it feels misplaced. Smith's weight has been almost identical since entering the league, 6 feet 1 inch, 236 pounds, the same as he was during the 2018 NFL Combine. Physically, he hasn't changed, and he's built differently than players like Warner, who is taller and carries less mass, or Louvu, who has a leaner frame. Smith is built to handle the physical grind of stopping the run, not to look like a track athlete in coverage. If we're being honest, his dip in performance last season had far more to do with Baltimore's overall defensive struggles. A new defensive coordinator, inconsistent secondary help outside of Kyle Hamilton, and an underperforming interior defensive line put more pressure on Smith. Justin Matabike regressed compared to his breakout year, and other key defenders didn't play up to expectations. Smith ended up being the one shouldering most of the criticism, fair or not. Now, here's the real question for Ravens fans. Was that assistant coach out of line, or does he have a point? Does Roquan Smith really need to improve his conditioning, or is this just noise coming from someone who doesn't understand what his role is in this defense? Smith isn't built to be a sleek coverage linebacker. He's built to hit, to punish running backs, to be the physical tone setter. Baltimore didn't trade for him to play like Warner. They traded for him to dominate in his own way. Because here's the thing, if there's one player on this roster who doesn't shy away from criticism, it's Roquan Smith. This is a guy who thrives on proving people wrong, and if you've watched him over the years, you know he takes every slight personally. The timing of these comments, coming right before training camp, might be the best thing that could have happened to the Ravens defense. Smith is already known for his relentless work ethic, and now he has even more fuel to dominate in 2025. Let's not forget the leadership factor either. Smith isn't just another linebacker, he's the quarterback of this defense. He wears the green, he calls the plays, and he sets the tone for every single player around him. When he's locked in, the entire defense plays at a different level. Last season, despite the secondary struggling with injuries and the defensive line failing to consistently control the trenches, Smith still found ways to make game-changing plays. And while critics will argue about coverage lapses, those came more from Baltimore being forced into bad matchups than from Smith simply being out of shape. But here's where it gets even more interesting. If the Ravens' defensive line can bounce back this season, if players like Justin Matabike return to their 2023 form, if young guys like Tavius Robinson take a leap forward, and if Travis Jones finally develops into that interior force, Smith's job gets a whole lot easier. Add in the fact that rookie safety Malachi Starks is expected to play significant snaps alongside Kyle Hamilton, and suddenly Smith won't have to carry as much of the load in coverage. That could free him up to do what he does best: attack downhill, blow up running lanes, and force turnovers. And speaking of reinforcements, Trenton Simpson is another huge factor here. Simpson barely saw the field at the end of last season, logging just 10 snaps in the final 5 games, including 0 in the playoffs. But all signs point to him stepping into a starting role next to Smith this year. If Simpson can finally develop into the player the Ravens envisioned when they drafted him, that could be the difference between Baltimore having a good defense and having a dominant one. The Ravens don't need Smith to cover sideline to sideline if Simpson can handle some of those responsibilities. Then there's the big question everyone's been asking: can Derrick Henry still be Derrick Henry? Because if this offense can control the clock and keep the defense fresh, Smith and company are going to feast. Training camp will be the first real test for Henry, and reports suggest that he looks strong. But until he takes that first hit in full contact drills, we won't really know. And remember, no running back over 32 has rushed for more than 1,400 yards in NFL history. If Henry can break that trend, it's going to make life a lot easier for Smith and the defense. But here's what Ravens fans really need to think about. Is this team ready to take the next step? Last year, Baltimore scored 518 points, over 30 per game, proving they can light up the scoreboard. But in the playoffs, when it mattered most, the defense couldn't get enough stops, and that falls partly on Smith's shoulders as the leader. Fair or not, that's the reality of being the face of a defense. And now, with the AFC loaded with elite quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen, Smith has to be at his absolute best if Baltimore is going to make a Super Bowl run. So I'll ask you this, Ravens fans: do you believe Roquan Smith can silence his critics this season? Will he use this as motivation to have his best year yet? Or do you think there's some truth to the talk about his conditioning? Could this be the year where Baltimore's defense finally matches its offensive firepower? Let me know your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think Roquan Smith is still one of the top 2 linebackers in the NFL, or does he have something to prove in 2025? And let's be clear, this entire conversation about Roquan Smith's conditioning might just be the spark that this locker room needed heading into training camp. The Ravens are built on a culture of physicality, pride, and proving doubters wrong, and Smith embodies that better than almost anyone on this roster. When an anonymous assistant questions his work ethic, you can bet that's going to fuel not only Smith but the entire defense. This is the kind of moment that can galvanize a team, especially one that still feels the sting of last year's playoff disappointment. If you followed Smith's career, you know that criticism has never broken him, it's made him better. From his college days at Georgia to becoming one of the highest paid linebackers in the NFL, Smith has built his career